In these trying times, I always reach out to Richard Nixon, Richard Milhouse Nixon. Here's the memoirs of Richard Milhouse Nixon. I was born in a house my father built. My birth on the night of January 9th, 1913 coincided with a record-breaking cold snap in our town of Yorba Linda, California. California! So Nixon's a fucking Californian? Yorba Linda, so is Reagan. God, how come our worst conservatives come out of California? Yorba Linda was a farming community of 200 people about 30 miles from Los Angeles, surrounded by avocado and citrus groves and barley, alfalfa, and bean fields. For a child, the setting was idyllic. In the spring, the air was heavy with the rich scent of orange blossoms, and there was much to excite a child's imagination. Glimpses of the Pacific Ocean to the west, the San Bernardino Mountains to the north, a haunted house in the nearby foothills to be viewed with awe and approached with caution, and a railroad line that ran about a mile from our house. In the daytime, I could see the smoke from the steam engine. Sometimes at night, I was awakened by the whistle of a train, and then I dreamed of the far-off places I wanted to visit someday. My brothers and I played railroad games, taking the parts of engineers and conductors. I remember the thrill of talking to Everett Barnum, the Santa Fe railroad engineer who lived in our town. All through grade school, my ambition was to become a railroad engineer. My first conscious memory is of running. I was 3 years old, and my mother was driving us in a horse-drawn buggy, holding my baby brother Dawn on her lap while a neighbor girl held me. The horse turned the corner leading to our house at high speed, and I tumbled onto the ground. I must have been in shock, but I managed to get up and run after the buggy while my mother tried to make the horse stop. The only after effect of this accident was that years later, when the vogue of parting hair on the left side came along, I still had to comb mine straight back to hide a scar caused by the fall. Oh, the vogue of parting hair on the left side came along. Our life in Yorba Linda was hard but happy. My father worked at whatever jobs he could find. Thanks to a vegetable garden and some of our own fruit trees, we had plenty to eat. Despite our low income, we also had a cow that provided milk, from which my mother made our butter and cheese. I started first grade in Yorba Linda's schoolhouse when I was 6. My mother had already taught me to read at home, and this head start enabled me to skip the second grade. After homework and chores, I often sat by the fireplace or at the kitchen table immersed in a book or magazine. We took the Los Angeles Times, the Saturday Evening Post, and the Ladies' Home Journal. Aunt Olive, my mother's youngest sister, and her husband Oscar Marsh Byrne lived in nearby Whittier and subscribed to the National Geographic. Nearly every time I visited them, I borrowed a copy. It was my favorite magazine. In 1922, my father sold our house in Lemon Grove in Yorba Linda, and we moved to Whittier. He did rustabout work in the oil fields, but although it paid well, this physical labor offered no challenge to a man of his ambition, intelligence, and lively imagination. Early on, my father could see that even though there were still very few automobiles and only one paved road in the area, the horseless carriage was an idea whose time was about to come. He borrowed $5,000 to buy some land on the main road connecting the growing towns of Whittier and La Habra. He cleared the lot, put in a tank and a pump, and opened the first service station in the 8-mile stretch between the two towns. The enterprise was almost an instant success, and he soon opened a general store and market. He added a small counter for my mother's home-baked pies and cakes. One of her specialties was angel food cake. She insisted that it was at its best only when she beat fresh outdoor air into the batter before putting it into the oven. I remember her standing outside the kitchen door in the chilly pre-dawn air, beating the batter with a big wooden spoon. The grocery business expanded rapidly, and had it not been for the illnesses that struck our family, we would have been modestly well off by the standards of those times. The Nixon market was a mom-and-pop operation. The whole family worked in the store. In addition to waiting on the customers and keeping the accounts, inventory had to be taken, orders placed, and the shelves kept stocked. The store had to be cleaned and swept every night and sprayed for flies each day. When I was older, I took over the fresh fruit and vegetable buying. Each morning I got up at 4 in order to be at the 7th Street Market in Los Angeles by 5 o'clock. I chose the best fruits and vegetables, bargained with the farmers and wholesalers for a good price, and then drove back to East Whittier to wash, sort, and arrange the produce in the store and be off to school by 8. It was not an easy life, but it was a good one, centered around a loving family and a small, tight-knit Quaker community. For those who are willing to work hard, California in the 1920s seemed a place and time of almost unlimited opportunity. The principle that opposites attract aptly describes my father and my mother in the most important ways. They were very much alike, but both were deeply religious. They were completely devoted to one another. No sacrifice was too great for them to make for their children, but two more temperamentally different people could hardly be imagined. My father, Francis Anthony Nixon, was known throughout his life as Frank. He was born on a farm in Ohio on December 3rd, 1878. His mother had died of tuberculosis when he was 8, and her long illness left the family almost penniless. After her death, the family moved to a small barren plot of land in eastern Ohio, where my father had to walk several miles each day to the nearest school. A newcomer, small in stature and dressed in ragged clothes, he was taunted by his schoolmates. He responded with a quick tongue and a ready pair of fists, and he soon became known as a natural fighter. The family fortunes did not improve, and after he had finished the 6th grade, he quit school and went to work. It was a necessary decision, but one he regretted all his life. Over the next few years, he held many jobs, acquiring new skills. With each, he drove an ox team, hauling logs to a sawmill, worked as a carpenter, managed a potato farm, sheared sheep in Colorado, and installed early hand-crank telephones. Throughout his life, my father tried to better himself through work. He moved to Columbus, Ohio, and became a streetcar motorman. The insides of those early trolleys were heated by pot-bellied stoves, but the vestibules where the motormen stood were open. During the winter of 1906. His feet became frostbitten. Complaints to the company went unheeded, so he organized a protest by the motormen and conductors. They managed to get a bill passed in the state legislature requiring that the vestibules be enclosed and heated. Nonetheless, okay, that's 3 pages. The early years, 1913 and 19